Why wait for disaster to strike your home? Some might say ignorance is bliss, but when your ceiling's dripping or the lights go out, that blissful ignorance, it pretty quickly turns into soggy, dark chaos. Welcome to Daily English Practice Listen and Speak. Today, we're diving deep into understanding common house problems and, importantly, the English vocabulary you need to describe them and, well, deal with them. Our mission is to equip you so you can maybe be a hero when someone needs tips to fix something around the house or, just feel more confident in these situations yourself. This deep dive will break down the language of home maintenance from spotting the issues, understanding repairs, and even knowing when it's really time to call in the professionals. We've all been there, right? One minute everything is humming along perfectly, and the next, bam, something unexpected happens and just rattles the peace of your home. These situations can be incredibly stressful, and the last thing you want is to be like fumbling for the right words in English. Our goal today is to give you that vocabulary, the precise words, so you can sound confident and capable no matter what your home throws at you.
That's a really good point. And what's helpful is that for a lot of these common household issues, many can be described using a pretty straightforward structure in English. Think noun plus be plus verbing, or noun plus be plus adjective. So for example, you might hear someone say, the toilet is clogged.
Meaning it's blocked up, right? Water's not going down.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or the smoke detector is broken, indicating it's not working properly, it's malfunctioning.
Okay, that makes sense. Like, the faucet is leaking. That's a classic one. You can almost hear that annoying drip, drip, drip.
Right. The sound that keeps you up at night.
Yeah. And just to clarify for everyone listening, sometimes you'll hear tap, especially in British English, but faucet is probably more common in American English.
Yeah.
Same thing, though.
Precisely. Other common ones you'll hear using that structure are, say, the paint is peeling. You can picture that, right? The paint literally separating from the wall.
Yeah, little flakes coming off.
Or the window is broken. And, when we think about a broken window, it isn't always some dramatic crash. Sure, it could be a mechanical impact, a ball hitting it, maybe moving furniture, or even slamming it too hard. But often it might just be wear and tear over time, especially with older frames, or even thermal stress, big temperature swings causing cracks.
Okay, interesting. And then there's the more serious one, like the heat is not working. Definitely not fun, especially in winter.
So as we talk through these, maybe try to visualize them. Have you encountered any of these issues yourself? Or maybe helped a friend describe one. It helps lock in the vocabulary. All right, so now we've got a feel for how to identify these issues using some simple English structures. Let's maybe dig a bit deeper into some common categories, starting with those. Well, often frustrating water-related problems. They always seem to pop up at the worst possible moments, don't they? They really do. Plumbing problems are incredibly common. And understanding the terms can save you a lot of grief and maybe some money, too. Leaky taps or faucets, as you mentioned, that's a prime example. The good news there, that simple drip, drip, drip is often something you can fix yourself.
Oh, really? So not necessarily a panic call to the plumber.
Not for a simple leak, no. It often just involves replacing a small, inexpensive part called a washer or maybe a seal. That usually stops the constant flow.
Okay, good to know. What about when water isn't flowing? Like when it just sits there?
Ah, you mean clogged drains or clogged pipes? That's another frequent one. The symptom is usually water not moving or maybe backing up in the sink or the shower or the toilet. For simple clogs, you might try using a plunger.
Right.
First, that rubber suction cup on a stick.
Right.
Or maybe chemical drain cleaners, which you pour down the drain. But you need to be careful with those.
Okay. But what about something more dramatic?
Right. So if you hear the term burst pipes, that's a whole different level. It's much more urgent. It means a pipe is actually opened up or cracked and water is escaping, often quite forcefully. This can cause serious water damage very quickly to walls, floors, furniture, everything. It definitely requires immediate professional help.
Right. And first step is turning off the water. Yeah.
Absolutely. Find your main water shut-off valve and turn it off immediately. And depending on where the water is going, you might need to turn off the electricity in that area too for safety.
Yikes. Burst pipes really do sound like a homeowner's worst nightmare. Okay, so turn off the water, check the electricity. What else is critical in that moment? Because I imagine panic sets in fast.
Yeah, staying calm is key, but hard. After the water and electrics are safe, you want to start removing water if you can, and definitely call a plumber right away. It just highlights how vital that whole plumbing system is. The water supply lines come in, the drainage pipes taking waste away. It's complex.
And you mentioned small parts doing big jobs earlier, like washers. Are there other little plumbing bits we should know about?
Definitely. A key term is trap. These are those curved pipes, usually shaped like a P, US, or J, right under your sinks and other fixtures.
Uh-huh, I've seen those.
Their shape holds a little bit of water, creating a seal. That seal is really important because it stops unpleasant and potentially harmful sewer gases from coming back up the drain and into your home.
Wow, okay, so that bendy pipe isn't just for show.
Not at all. Those gases can make you sick, and in very rare, extreme cases, they could even be explosive. Another small but vital part is an O-ring. It's a little rubber ring, often found in faucets, and it acts as a seal to prevent water from oozing out where parts connect. Simple but effective.
That's fascinating, the hidden world of plumbing. Okay, let's move from waterworks to, well, getting into your house, problems with doors and locks. Nothing quite as frustrating as being locked out, is there? I remember once juggling groceries and that horrible feeling, where are my keys? I'd lost my keys. And remember, lost means you don't know where they are, they're misplaced. It's different from missed, like missing a person.
Right, a common mix-up.
Yeah. And the first thing you usually do is retrace your steps, right? Try to remember where you were, where you might have put them down.
That's the classic solution. Another frustrating door issue is a broken key in the lock. Ugh, that's when the key literally snaps off, leaving a piece stuck inside the lock mechanism.
Oh, no. What do you do then? You can't just pull it out, can you?
Usually not easily. This almost always means calling a locksmith. They're the professionals for locks and keys. They have special tools to extract the broken piece, and often they can make you a new key right there.
Definitely a job for an expert. Okay, what if the key isn't broken, but the lock just won't turn, or the door won't open?
That sounds like a jammed door lock or just a jammed door. The mechanism is stuck or not working right. Sometimes, honestly, a good shove, a firm push on the door might free it up.
The technical term, a good shove. Got it.
Well, sometimes it works. But if it's properly jammed or if the lock mechanism itself feels broken, then yeah, it's another call to the locksmith to either fix it or, more likely, replace the lock.
Makes sense. Okay, from the front door, let's look up. Way up, to the roof. Problems up there can sometimes go unnoticed for a while, right? Until, uh-oh.
Absolutely. Out of sight, out of mind, until it rains. A leaky roof is a serious one. Water finds its way into your house through gaps or damage in the roofing material. You might see symptoms like water stains appearing on your ceiling or maybe down the walls, or even actual drips.
So what's the fix? Patch it up.
For very small, isolated leaks, maybe, there are special roof patching compounds you can get. But for anything more significant, or if you're not sure where it's coming from, you might need to replace some roofing materials. And honestly, working on a roof is dangerous. Heights, slopes, it's often best to call a professional roofer for anything beyond a very minor, easily accessible patch. Safety first.
Good advice. It really shows how even a small thing, like one missing tile, could lead to bigger problems inside.
Exactly. Which brings us to clogged gutters. Gutters are those channels or pipes along the edge of your roof that collect rainwater and direct it away from the house.
Right, supposed to carry water away.
Yes, but they often get blocked up with leaves, twigs, dirt, all sorts of debris. When they're clogged, water can overflow and potentially damage the roof edges or even the foundation.
So cleaning them out is important.
Very. You could do it yourself if you have a safe ladder and are comfortable with heights. But again, many people hire a professional gutter cleaning service. It's safer.
Okay. And what about those tiles you mentioned, like terracotta or slate pieces on the roof?
Yeah, missing roof tiles, strong winds, storms, even just age can cause individual tiles or shingles to break or come loose. When that happens, it compromises the roof's protection. You can sometimes buy replacement tiles at hardware stores if it's a DIY job you're comfortable with. But again, a roofer is often the best bet to ensure it's done correctly and safely.
Right. Okay. Moving from the top of the house to maybe less welcome occupants inside the house. Let's talk about pests. It's a bit, well, disgusting for some, but infestations are a common problem. I remember a friend hearing scratching sounds. Turned out it was just a branch, but the fear of pests is real.
Oh, absolutely. When we talk about rodents, we usually mean furry things like mice, rats, maybe even squirrels if they get inside.
Well,
They have those constantly growing front teeth, so they gnaw on things, wires, wood, insulation.
not good. And they're after food too, right?
Always. So
Yeah.
keeping your home clean is step one. But also, storing food properly in sealed containers is crucial. And look for any small holes or gaps where they might be getting in and seal them up. Think like a rodent. Where's the food, water, shelter? Make your home less inviting.
Good tips. But if they're already established,
If you have an actual infestation, it's usually best to call a professional pest control service, sometimes called an exterminator. They have the knowledge and treatments to manage the problem safely and effectively.
okay. What about creepy crawlies? Insects.
Yeah, insects cover a wide range. Ants, flies,
Yeah.
mosquitoes, cockroaches, the usual suspects. Again, cleanliness is key. Don't leave food or dirty dishes out. Some people find natural repellents helpful, things with strong scents like lavender, mint, or lemon. Regular vacuuming and wiping surfaces helps too. Basically make it less appealing for them to hang around.
Got it. Okay, let's switch gears again, this time to the electrical system. This feels like an area where safety is absolutely paramount.
It truly is. Electrical issues demand respect. A common, less scary one is a faulty light. Maybe it flickers constantly or just won't turn on at all.
First step, check the bulb.
Always. Check the light bulb first. It might just be burned out, that's an easy fix. But if a new bulb doesn't solve it, the problem might be the light switch itself or the wiring.
And that's not a DIY job.
Replacing a switch or dealing with wiring. Definitely not, unless you are a qualified electrician. For anything beyond changing a bulb, it's best to call a licensed electrician.
Okay, what about when everything just goes dark?
That's a power outage or power cut. The electricity supply stops working. Things. Check if your neighbors have power. If they do, the problem is likely inside your house. If they don't, it's probably a wider issue, and you'd call your electricity company.
And if it is just your house?
Then you need to check your circuit breaker panel, or maybe an older fuse box. Often, a circuit breaker has simply switched off automatically because of an overload or a fault. You might be able to just flip it back on.
What's a circuit breaker exactly?
It's basically a safety switch. If too much electricity flows through a circuit, it snaps off to prevent overheating, potential fires, or damage to appliances. A fuse in older systems does a similar job, but it contains a wire that melts and breaks the circuit permanently when overloaded, so the fuse itself needs replacing.
Okay, and if flipping the breaker back on doesn't work or it keeps tripping?
Then you likely have a bigger problem on that circuit, and that's definitely time to call an electrician. Don't keep resetting it if it trips immediately. It's helpful to know a few other terms too. Amperes, or amps, measure the flow of current. Voltage is the electrical pressure. An RCD, or residual current device, is a super important safety device that detects imbalances in current flow, like if electricity is going somewhere it shouldn't, maybe through a person, and cuts the power very quickly to prevent serious shock.
Wow, RCDs sound vital.
They really are, especially in areas near water like kitchens and bathrooms. And terms like earthing and bonding refer to safety measures that connect electrical systems and metalwork to the ground, providing a safe path for electricity to flow away in case of a fault, rather than through someone touching a faulty appliance.
It's clear that while some things, like changing a bulb, are fine, anything more complex with electricity really needs a pro. Know your limits, right?
Absolutely. Prioritize safety every time.
So we've touched on this a few times, but let's talk more explicitly. When is it really time to put down the tools, step away from the YouTube tutorial, and call in the experts?
That's a crucial judgment call. Knowing your limits is key. There are specific professionals for different jobs, as we've mentioned. You've got your handyman, good for general small repairs, maybe putting up shelves, minor fixes. Then the specialists, the plumber for water and pipes, the exterminator or pest control service, the electrician for wiring, the locksmith for locks and keys. There's also a glazier who specifically deals with fitting glass into windows and doors, and a carpenter or joiner for anything involving wood structures, framing, cabinetry, that sort of thing.
Okay, so knowing who to call is step one. Now, thinking about bigger projects, we saw that example of renovating an Airstream trailer in the source materials. That sounds like a massive undertaking, starting with demolition.
Yeah, stripping it right down to the skin and bones, as they put it. Basically taking everything out back to the bare structure.
And then building it all back up. Electrical, plumbing, insulation, then flooring, cabinets, lights, appliances. Wow.
It's a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
And then comes what they called the finishing work.
Right, the cosmetic stuff. Sanding, filling holes, painting. The details that make it look polished, showroom quality.
Exactly. But even that stage has its challenges. They mention things like scribing. What exactly is that? Scribing is quite a skill. Imagine you're fitting a cabinet against a wall that isn't perfectly straight or flat, which many aren't. Scribing involves tracing the exact contour of the wall onto the edge of the cabinet material and then cutting along that line so the cabinet fits perfectly snug against the uneven surface.
Oh, wow. So it's like custom fitting it on the spot?
Precisely. It takes patience and a good eye. They also mentioned issues like parts bowing, Maybe sliding doors rubbing because the wood wasn't perfectly straight, needing careful adjustment.
It really highlights how much skill goes into these trades. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of this is learned through learning on the job, like apprenticeships.
Yes, that's still very common and incredibly valuable in trades like construction, woodworking, plumbing. Instead of just classroom learning, you're getting paid, albeit usually less at first, while gaining practical, hands-on experience alongside experienced professionals. For many, it's preferable to formal trade school, especially considering tuition costs.
That makes a lot of sense. Practical skills are gold. Okay, but let's talk costs. Repairs aren't cheap. What about something like fixing a window? And who pays if you're renting?
Good questions. Costs vary a lot, obviously. For windows, just replacing a single pane of glass might be, say, 100, 158. If it's a double or triple glazed unit that's failed, maybe 200 to 400. If you need the whole window frame replaced, that could easily be 400 to 1,000 euro or even more, depending on the size and type. Plus, you'll usually have installation fees on top of that.
So definitely worth getting a few quotes.
Always. Get multiple quotes from different glaziers or window companies. Now, if you're renting, the general rule is that the landlord is responsible for major structural and exterior repairs. That includes things like the roof, walls, and usually windows and external doors, assuming it's normal wear and tear.
And the tenant?
The tenant is usually responsible for minor interior maintenance and keeping the place clean. However, and this is important, if the tenant causes the damage, say, accidentally breaks a window through carelessness, then the tenant might be liable for the repair cost.
Okay, so communication is key.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're a tenant and there's a problem like a broken window or a serious leak, you need to report it to your landlord or letting agent promptly. It's best to do this in writing, detailing the problem, when it started, and what needs fixing.
Got it. What about insurance? Can that help cover these unexpected costs?
Sometimes, yes. It depends on the cause of the damage and the type of insurance you have. Liability insurance, maybe if a guest accidentally broke something. Contents insurance, which tenants often have, mainly covers your belongings against things like theft or maybe water damage from a burst pipe inside, but usually not the structure itself like the window frame, unless you have specific accidental damage cover added to your policy. Buildings insurance, which the homeowner or landlord typically holds, covers the structure itself against things like storms, fire, vandalism, sometimes accidental damage, depending on the policy.
So the lesson is check your policy documents carefully.
Always. Know what you're covered for before something happens, if possible.
Okay, great advice. Now let's shift focus to something many people do try themselves. Painting. It seems like a straightforward way to freshen up a place, right?
It is. Painting is probably one of the most popular DIY projects. But, and this is a big but, the secret to a good paint job is that it's like 90% preparation.
90%. Wow, what does that involve?
It means you can't just open a can and start slapping paint on the walls. First, you have to clean the walls thoroughly. Get rid of dust, cobwebs, any greasy marks, especially in kitchens. Paint just won't stick properly to dirt. Then, you need to fill any cracks or holes, nail holes, dents using spackle or filler. Let it dry, then sand it smooth so it blends perfectly with the wall. Then you usually prime those patch spots before painting the whole wall.
Prime, like a base coat.
Exactly. Primer helps the paint adhere better and gives a more even finish. Oh, and don't forget caulking, filling the gaps along baseboards, window frames, door frames. It makes everything look much cleaner and more professional.
Okay, so prep is king. What about the actual tools and paint? Does quality really matter?
Oh, hugely. Don't skimp here. Invest in decent quality brushes and rollers. Cheap ones shed bristles or leave a fuzzy texture, and they just make the job harder and look worse. Same goes for paint. Good quality paint tends to be thicker, covers better, and might mean you only need 2 coats instead of 3 or 4. It saves you time and effort in the long run.
That makes sense. Any tips for tricky situations, like painting over really dark colors?
Yes. If you're painting a light color over a very dark one, ask the paint store to tint your primer gray or close to your final color. A tinted primer does a much better job of hiding the old dark color, meaning you'll need fewer coats of your expensive top coat paint.
Smart. Okay, what about techniques? Anything the pros do that we amateurs often miss?
A key skill is cutting in. That's painting the edges neatly where the wall meets the ceiling, along baseboards, around windows and door frames. Pros often do this freehand with an angled brush, creating a really crisp line without using tape. It takes practice, though.
I can imagine. What if you do use tape, like that blue or green painter's tape?
If you use painter's tape, like Frog Tape is a popular brand, apply it firmly. A good tip is to peel the tape off while the paint is still slightly wet. If you wait until it's fully dry, the paint film can sometimes tear or peel off with the tape.
Ah, okay, good tip.
Also, a little moisture on the tape before applying can help it bond better. Sequence matters too. Always paint the ceiling first, then the walls, then the trim, like baseboards and window frames. Use flat paint on ceilings. It hides imperfections better.
Ceiling first, walls, then trim. Got it. Any other practical tricks?
Get a roller extension handle. Seriously, it saves your back and shoulders, especially on ceilings and high walls. And always remove the cover plates from electrical outlets and light switches before you start painting. Don't try to paint around them, it looks messy.
Guilty as charged on that one before. What about applying the paint with the roller?
Use the W method. Load your roller with paint, then roll a large W shape onto the wall. Then fill in that W with more strokes, spreading the paint evenly without lifting the roller too much. This helps avoid lines and get uniform coverage.
W method. Okay, I'll try that next time. What about cleanup and storing leftover paint? And common mistakes.
For breaks between coats, you don't always need to wash your brushes and rollers. Wrap them tightly in plastic wrap or put them in a plastic bag, seal it, and you can even pop them in the fridge for a day or two. They'll stay wet.
Handy.
Before you use a brand new roller cover, wrap it in painter's tape and peel it off. This removes any loose fuzz or lint that would otherwise end up in your paint. For leftover paint, make sure the lid is sealed tightly. Label the can clearly with the room name and the date. A good trick is to put a layer of plastic wrap over the opening of the can before putting the lid on it. Helps create a better seal and prevents rust from forming around the rim.
Great storage tip.
And mistakes to avoid.
The biggest ones are not doing the prep work, cleaning, patching, not using primer when needed, especially over dark colors or stains, stopping painting halfway across a wall, always paint a full section, corner to corner or ceiling to floor, before taking a break to avoid lap marks, and just painting over existing problems like damp patches or peeling paint instead of fixing the underlying issue first. That's a fantastic rundown. Really practical advice for anyone thinking of painting. Okay, finally, let's circle back to prevention. How can we be proactive and maybe stop some of these issues before they even start?
Prevention is definitely the goal. It saves time, money, and stress. For windows, for example, it's a good idea to check the seals around the glass maybe once a year. If they look cracked or pulling away, replacing them can improve energy efficiency and prevent moisture problems. Lubricating window hinges and tracks occasionally keeps them opening and closing smoothly,
Yeah.
preventing strain or jamming. And think about how you ventilate.
How so?
Instead of leaving windows slightly open all the time, especially in cold weather, which can stress frames and seals, try burst ventilation. That means opening windows wide for just 5–10 minutes to get a good air exchange, then closing them fully and gently. Don't slam them.
Burst ventilation. Okay. Are there quick checks we can do regularly?
Sure. Simple things. You can do a quick draft test. Trap a piece of paper between the window sash and frame when it's closed. If you can pull the paper out easily, your seals might not be tight enough. Or the old candle test. Carefully hold a lit candle near the edges of a closed window on a windy day. If the flame flickers significantly, you've likely got an air leak. Also, just periodically check if windows are getting stiff to open or close, or look closely for any small cracks starting the glass. Catching things early is key.
It really seems like prompt action and just some regular, simple maintenance can head off a lot of bigger headaches down the road. Being proactive definitely pays off. So we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive on English for house repair. We went from identifying common problems, leaky faucets, jammed doors, using simple English structures, to understanding more specific issues with plumbing, roofing, pests, and those tricky electrical systems. We talked about when it's time to call in the professionals, the plumbers, electricians, locksmiths, and so on. We even explored some practical DIY skills like painting, digging into the importance of prep work and technique. And we touched on the big stuff too, like a full home renovation. Hopefully this has given you not just the vocabulary, but also more confidence to understand and talk about these common house issues, whether you're dealing with them yourself or helping someone else.
And maybe think about it this way. Every repair you make, every fresh coat of paint you apply, even just silencing that annoying drip, it isn't just fixing something broken. It's kind of like having a conversation with your house. It's telling you what it needs to keep being your safe, comfortable sanctuary. When you start to understand that language, you shift from being maybe a worried homeowner to being a more capable steward of your own space. You're actively participating in its well-being.
That's a really lovely way to put it. A conversation with your house. I like that. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into English for house repair. If you found this helpful, please do like this deep dive and be sure to subscribe to our channel, Daily English Practice. Listen and speak for more insights and essential English practice.